I'm Candler Budd.
Brian Chapman.
And this is Grab the Remote.
I love the awkward, but it's not awkward. It's a good pause. That was a dramatic pause is what it was.
Yes,
I love it.
yes. You like the dramatic pause? I'm trying to be more dramatic in life and in this show.
I thought it was great. For a second there, I thought you wanted me to fill in the lines, but I just let you have it.
Thank you for letting me have it. I'm so excited about this episode. My future self is excited. Myself from the past, myself from the alternate 1985. I cannot tell you how excited I am to talk about Back to the Future.
This is a movie that we've both spent a lot of time probably thinking about through the years, not unlike the Star Wars trilogy, the original trilogy.
Yeah.
So and we've never really had a chat about Back to the Future Part 1. And so that makes it fun for me because Candler and I, that's what we do. We talk about movies. So this is our conversation about a movie that we hold near and dear to our hearts.
Absolutely. It's 1985, seeing the movie, being in the present when Back to the Future happens. And 1955 was something that was familiar to me, and I'm sure to you, Brian, because my parents grew up in the 50s.
Right.
So there was a fun nostalgia piece to that movie. It was something very universal. A kid goes back and meets his father and his mother. And now we have another nostalgia piece added to it because we see the 80s 30 years later. This movie, other than the Lorraine and Biff scenario, it really holds up. It really holds up.
I agree. I mean, this is, I talk about this a lot. It seems to me that more so men have their top 10. I keep mine very closely guarded. But Back to the Future is going to be always in my top 5 movies of all time. And I'll say it like this. Michael Fox, put the J in there. He doesn't need it anymore, right? Michael J. Fox, at that time period, Back to the Future comes out in July of 85. And then a month later, Teen Wolf comes out. And during this time period from 82 to, I guess, 89, he is on arguably one of the best sitcoms of the 80s, Family Ties.
Yes.
And so 85 was very good for Michael J. Fox. And at that time, for me, obviously I liked Back to the Future better, but I was going to see Teen Wolf. This was like a Michael J. Fox summer. Right, you got Family Ties, probably in reruns, but I mean, this was when I was totally on board with the movie, with the actor, with the actors. Obviously, Bob Gale,
producer,
Robert Zemeckis,
writer.
Yeah, those guys really crafted something fun, and it holds up.
I wanted to research this before our episode, but I never got around to it.
Time
got in the way. Do you know how much Spielberg had to do creatively, or was he just a name producer?
Okay, so an executive producer, and he had worked with Bob Gale and Bob Z previously on 1941 and maybe a few others, right? Used Cars. I might be wrong about that, but
definitely 1941.
No one was, they were shopping the script around and nobody was biting for various reasons. They say, well, we'll try Steven. And there's a few things that happened because they felt like there was a jinx that might happen because the previous times they'd worked with Steven,
the movie flopped.
It was a big old flop, right? A huge flop. So, but this is also under the umbrella of Amblin Entertainment. Now, when I was a kid, when I saw Amblin Entertainment in the E.T., in the moon, I was like, that's for me. That's what I knew was going to be good. So I don't think it was the first. And that actually, if I'm not mistaken, there was a short, like a little television program called Amblin that Spielberg was involved in, and that's how he got the name for that particular, for his company. So was that before or after Amazing Stories? Remember Amazing Stories? Yeah, so that's like 85, 86, right? With Kevin Costner's in one of the Amazing Stories.
Mark Hamill's in the Amazing Stories.
The plane.
And then there's an old man at the beginning that's looking at the TV and he looks back at his family. I approve of this show. Remember that guy?
Yeah. That's that. We've got to do an amazing stories episode now. The short-lived yet beloved amazing stories. This also, Candler. Now I mentioned this in one of the previous episodes. The odd choice of The Search for Animal Chin, but I will say this: for 1985, and for many kids around America and the world, Back to the Future got them into skateboarding, and it certainly put skateboarding on the map for me. I would say 6 months later, I had my own board, and I was learning skateboard tricks like a lot of other kids. So that was another thing. Like Back to the Future has been a big had a lot of emphasis because of skating.
Did you have the long hair that would kind of go down in front of your eyes?
I never did. I just had the long hair in the back that would just kind of come out like nice. It was just a beautiful mullet with spikes. It was spiky and mullety.
Did you ever have a tendency to say things like a question? Like that?
Never.
Yeah, I hate that. Drives me crazy. But great opening. I mean, of course, people got into skateboarding because of you. I mean, because of Marty McFly. Are you Marty McFly?
I wish.
Yeah.
The 17-year-old, not 47. We'll talk about Back to the Future later. But that's the cool thing about it. And this is something that I'm regurgitating. But Marty invents skateboarding, and he also invents rock and roll. Like there's so many things that he invents.
All right, that was one of the things I was going to talk about. All right.
Okay, go ahead.
I didn't think we're going to get into this soon, but we got to start talking about the mechanics of time travel.
Oh boy.
And you brought up the skateboarding and the rock and roll. And I think the third example is Goldie Wilson, future Mayor Goldie Wilson. Does that show that Marty had already gone back and had always gone back? And the same thing with the mayor, that he convinces the mayor to run for mayor. He invents rock and roll. He invents skating. But then later in the film, he does things that changes the present, like Lone Pine Small and so forth. And yes, I'm serious about this. You can laugh at me.
Those are great. Let me get my my whiteboard up here, and we're going to write all the things that all those are delightful questions that I might not be able to answer in this short time span. I need to look at that. So I know that Doc broke the ledge.
Ryan, you have a tendency. You do this thing where you lean into your mic, and I'm going to slow it down so that my stupid co-host can understand it. And it's funny to me.
Let me go back in time. And, I think it has to do with just me having a microphone. I don't have my headset on. I just need to do this. You're bringing up great points. See, here's the deal. We all understand the movies that we like have issues and problems, and those are the things that we go with, right? Even in our beloved Star Wars, there are things that may not make sense, or there's a little editing gaffe here or there. I
would argue that's not a problem. What we mentioned, it's just a fun debate about time travel.
Love that.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned me leaning in. Now I'm going to be thinking about it. So anyway, it has everything to do with the microphone. Let's talk about for a second Alan Silvestri and the music.
Yes.
So I also, and again, from 85 on, I was, gosh, there's so many. And here's the thing. Let me I'm going to lean in and tell you something, Candler. Because of this episode, we're talking about something that we like so much. I know I'm going to forget something, and we're going to go back and go, you remember we should have talked about this. So that's where my brain is racing right now. But the score is so good, and even the soundtrack with the songs. And we would be, it would be a tragedy to not talk about Huey Lewis and the News as well. Tell me about how you feel about the soundtrack.
Well, whenever I get upset about something, I just change my heart to a little white dove. More than feeling, that's the power of love. I mean, it's one of the greatest movie hits. It's fantastic. And Silvestri's score, it's dramatic and fun simultaneously. It's so serious, but yet it's so fun and has so many layers. And
it's in my favorite. I mean, we talked a little bit about Superman the movie and, of course, the Star Wars saga, but that is probably one of the best non-John Williams scores.
Yeah.
So delightful. In 86, I believe, this was in, I guess, the fall, I got to see Huey Lewis and the News at the Omni in Atlanta.
Omni, yes.
And, I mean, this was me I was, I guess, 13. And so I was able to go with older teenagers And that's the way it was. I swear, I could go.
Of course.
Anywhere. I'm surprised. I'm sitting here. I could go wherever. So we went up to the Omni. I was waiting with bated breath for The Power of Love, and also Back in Time, which were both great. And they played it, and it was just so good. And so that's a little time capsule for those guys. And they again, for the '80s, Huey Lewis had some hits.
I have a good friend that went to a Huey Lewis concert within the last 10 years, and he was, I think it was in Philly, and Huey Lewis was talking about the good old days that back in Philly, and he had a lot of fun with a lot of ladies, and then this guy that was sitting close to him went, "Hey, Huey, you're my dad!" And then like the whole crowd erupted, and then Huey just sat there for a second, just shook his head, and then he kept going, and then he sang "Power of Love" or whatever it was he sang. But I wish I'd been there. That's hilarious.
That is great. I love that. There's everybody involved. I mean, if you think about you mentioned Claudia Wells, who was wonderful as the first Jennifer.
Sure.
We could just go through the cast. Chris Lloyd as Doc Brown, James Tolkien as Strickland.
Sorry to interrupt. Christopher Lloyd, if it were not for his performance in this movie, I never would have had any desire to ever study acting, to go into theater, to do any of that. So if in an alternate universe, if Back to the Future didn't exist, I would have been, I don't know, a telemarketer wearing a stupid headphone and with a mic, or I could have been a proctologist. I mean, he could have done a lot of things. But that movie and Christopher Lloyd's performance, mainly his eyes are incredible. He's such a great storyteller with his eyes.
I'm going to lean in and say this. I love that every time you're telling a story, this is good. You're talking about alternate realities. Please keep doing that. It is a wonderful theme to do. If this didn't happen, then this, because that's everything about what Back to the Future is all about.
Sure.
And of course, we're talking to people who have obviously seen it. So you know the story, of course. Christopher Lloyd was in Taxi. He'd done obviously a lot of great things, and it's also one of these great mentor. Kind of the student mentor piece. It's funny. You don't understand how they know each other, why they know each other. And I want to bring up a good point because I was thinking about a Christopher Lloyd line. There's a funny Ronald Reagan story where he was watching Back to the Future and Ronald Reagan,
the actor.
Right. And so Ronald Reagan tells he requests the guy up in the booth to run that back so he can see that. Which I think is great. Mommy, would you, whatever.
He quoted the film, the end of Where We're Going, We Don't Need Roads in a State of the Union. And then according to Bob Gale in the DVD commentary of episode 3, which we're not going to talk about, he was almost going to play the mayor of Hill Valley in 1885, which would have been interesting and cool.
That would have been, wow. That's
But we're not going to talk about the sequels.
Never. And by the way, even though we're not going to talk about the sequels, I will say it was a very long 4 years for me after the first one. And we can just leave it at that. But I can remember going, when will and Michael was making movies, and I was like, well, that's I guess Secret of My Success and Doc Hollywood.
The Secret of My Success. That's a good one.
There's a few hits and misses, but I was watching everything, waiting for November '89, and then the cool thing they did was film 2 and 3 back to back. But we're not talking about the sequels, are we?
No, we are not. It's Claudia Wells, not Elizabeth Shue.
Shue, not Allie with an I from The Karate Kid.
Exactly. And the movie we're talking about, Marty, was never called a chicken.
That's true.
Yeah.
So Zemeckis, and there's another thing about this that you might know, which is Zemeckis these guys are already great. He is one of our best filmmakers. You mentioned Forrest Gump as a recommendation. He obviously directed that. But the reason Back to the Future exists in a lot of ways is because he had a hit with 1984's Romancing the Stone. Crispin Glover, talk a little bit about Crispin, because in my personal opinion, without Crispin as George, the movie is just not as fun.
Well, let's talk about him versus Leah Thompson. I feel personally she gets A for portraying the mom at the beginning in 1985. She gets a B for playing the mom in the altered 1985. She gets an A triple plus in the 1950s version, and you could tell she's having fun. I mean, every nuance. I mean, I watched this film about an hour ago, and my wife and I were cracking up at her performance. I mean, it's every nuance. Now, switching over to Crispin Glover, all three versions of George McFly in the original Back to the Future, absolutely A+++. I mean, it's amazing how just incredible he is.
I could see George McFly actually having his own time travel adventure. Now we can talk about the pitfalls that happen with part 2, like there's kind of there's two different stories, but this kind of all this new information about why he was not in part 2, and then of course part 3. But that to me is another kind of an alternate what if of like George McFly understanding that time travel exists and his son has done it. Like, to me, that is something they could have explored, and I hate that there's some missed opportunities there. Leah Thompson's everything you said, I totally agree with, and I don't have to really say anything other than nice work. Did you get the sense when you were in 1985 that she was an alcoholic? Like, it took me a little while to understand it in terms of just like that was the character, because it was pretty pitiful. I mean, there's a lot of comedy going on at the table, but I
did get it. It might have been that because my older sister pointed it out to me. I remember she pointed it out, the news report at the beginning of the film and the plutonium underneath. I didn't notice any of that, which is another thing that's great about this movie. This is a movie you have to see again. It's not a movie you just want to see one time to find all the different Easter eggs and so forth. But yes, I think I did get it for two reasons. One, I think my sister pointed out to me. Another reason is because there's alcoholism in my family. So it's something we did see. But yes, there was some depth there. So maybe I should have given her I gave her an A, though. It was a good performance.
Yeah, you gave her, that was a ringing endorsement.
Yeah.
Everybody deals with jerks, right? So you got Thomas F. Wilson. Tom Wilson as Biff. That's another perfect casting. And again, like either you are a bully, you're a jerk, or you have to deal with them in life. Like we all have to deal with just goons. Right?
Yeah.
There's always going to be some goon in your life.
Yeah.
So the best part about Back to the Future is like he is the embodiment, because if you are following Marty along, you get it.
Yeah.
Like, this is a guy who is a bully to your dad, and then you go back in time, and now he's your own bully.
Sure.
So he and his little goon squad, which also has a very young who's in Billy Zane
from Titanic.
So, yeah, and Tombstone, and a few others. He's great. So anyway, Tom Wilson's great, and
Tom Wilson is obviously great in the film, but he was great as to Back to the Future fans. I mean, he did stand up where he pulled up his guitar and did a whole song about Back to the Future, and it was basically all the questions that he gets. Apparently, he is
very fun.
Very fun. So check that out. He was in the TV show The Ghost Whisperer.
He was also in I hope I'm not incorrect. He was in a horror movie called April Fool's Day, if I'm not mistaken.
Future Candler, is he correct?
If not, well, let's do a correction slide. That's the one thing, man. We flub, but so what, right? Maybe that's a flub, maybe not. Who cares?
We can go back in time and fix it. It's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything about Back to the Future, like it has become. The term iconic becomes too overused, much like me saying phenomenal all the time. But everything we could talk about with Back to the Future is that word. So the DeLorean, best movie car ever, in my personal opinion, right? Anytime we can say any number of things that are going on, from the flux capacitor to a match made in space, George McFly's book. I mean, that to me. And we can. Well, how about this? That's me giving you this question after I make this statement. I wanted you to kind of put you on the spot and just think about the things that have become part of public consciousness and are so fun. But something that speaks to me
because of Back to the Future.
Yeah, just in general.
I can give you one.
Go ahead.
Well, I was never the cool kid, but always hung out with the cool kid. And whenever we were leaving and some dorky kid would say, "Hey, where are you going?" I would always go, "To the future," which meant I didn't want to tell them where I was going.
How did that land usually? Did that land? Did everybody just kind of go?
I think, see, you're leaning into the mic. You're basically telling me it didn't land.
Did that land? No, I don't know. I wasn't there. I didn't go. I wasn't, my future self didn't go to the past and stand on the sidewalk and watch that happen. And then, so I don't know.
It was kind of a test because the cool, you know, if they would laugh at it, then I'm like, oh, that guy, you know, he's down. But if you're like, what? Then he wasn't down. So
I always like, why don't you make like a tree and leave? Okay. Or no, I'm sorry. I'm saying it the right way. I just said it the right way because I refuse to make like a tree and get out of here.
Get out of here.
I just made, okay, so if you didn't know yet, leave.
You were getting to, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Just back to the match made in space, which is it's this thick. I mean, I don't know. It's this thick. The cover is the best. But for me, that is also something that's kind of on the serious side. There's a lot of serious themes in this movie. Obviously, the generation gap, but the family relationships. But, you know, these dreams that are unfulfilled always speaks to me. So the fact that George was ashamed of his writing, and then because Marty visits and through all the things that happen, you know, he gets his novel published, you know, and that to me is just the little tidbit at the end of the book coming in the box is just, those are the fun little details for me.
I think it's your new book. I love
your first novel.
Yes. And of course, George McFly hands the book to Marty. See, if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything, which, of course, is what Marty said to him in the past. We were going around through the characters, and we got to Strickland.
Right.
Strickland's funny to me. He's great. He's awesome. It's funny how he doesn't age. Is he a good principal or a bad principal?
Is he even in the principal? Maybe he's just the dean of,
it says discipline, which is hilarious. Discipline.
So he, I love that. You know, it's the funny their noses touch. You know, in the history of Hill Valley, right?
Yeah.
That just to me, I don't see how they didn't crack up over that. I think that he runs a tight ship. I think Marty should honestly be more mindful of his time.
However, though, there's graffiti on the school grounds.
Oh, it's pitiful. Yeah, it's you know, Hill Valley is going downhill. It has gone. And it gets worse. Of course, we're not.
We're not talking about the sequel.
But to me, he's very effective in that. I love that he doesn't really. Marty does not run afoul of Strickland in 55 much at all. Like, he's more so just. I mean, they're just kind of for comedic purposes that he doesn't age, right? He never had hair. And he's great in, we're not talking about the sequels, but I love him in 3.
Oh, yeah.
But that guy's great. He was in a great TV show that I can't recall the name, but the small role in Top Gun that he plays.
That's right.
So he's super. And that's the best part about Back to the Future, that everybody did well. The crew, cast and crew, phenomenal. That made it run. And, you know.
There are a couple of reasons why this film has stood the test of time. One, it's a universal thing, going back in time to meet your parents. I mean, we've all thought of that. Also, I think that movie could not be made now, because now you either have a small budget independent film, or you have the super size budget of something like an Avengers. And this one, which is kind of like a mid to high mid budget, with a mixing of kind of the genre, just wouldn't happen these days, which is unfortunate, because it meant so much to so many people. As you probably know, when they shop the story around, so many studio execs say, "Hey, we want something raunchier. We want something like Fast Times at Ridgemont High." I wonder if Harvey Weinstein was in any of those meetings. But anyway, so then a lot of them said, "Hey, go see Disney." So they went to see Disney, and they said, "Are you kidding me? A mother falling in love with the son? No way." But luckily, it happened.
Spielberg.
Yeah, you're right.
Thank you, Steven.
That's why I was asking her about Spielberg. Was his thing, he just made it happen, but then he took. I would love to know what type of creative input he had, if any, once filming started.
Good question. Yeah, I mean, I think here's a good example. I won't say good example. Here's an example. So he obviously has both of his hands around Poltergeist, 1982,
Uh-huh.
but that's directed by the late Tobe Hooper, who directed the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. A lot of people credit Spielberg with the reason why Poltergeist worked so well. I mean, Tobe was great, but I think that for him being the executive producer, he does a lot. But I don't know. That's a good question. But I think Robert Zemeckis had it well in hand. I think they really knew what they were doing.
Mhm.
And he probably was just, again, doing all the little things to make it work. Should we talk about the thing that no one knew about until just recently, which was Eric Stoltz was Marty McFly? That's an interesting little tidbit.
It really is. They really wanted Michael J. Fox. He was locked into Family Ties. Eric Stoltz came on board. He was just not working like at all. They kept watching the dailies. He was more method. He was a method actor, and he didn't really understand the comedy, supposedly. And then after I think it was 6 weeks of shooting?
5 or 6
weeks.
Right.
They got rid of him, and then they brought Michael J. Fox on. He would shoot Family Ties during the day. He would get like 3 or 4 hours of sleep, if that, often in the car on the way. Sometimes the studio crew people would have to pick him up out of his bed, carry him to his car, put them in the car, drive him to the lot. So many of those scenes you see are at night. And it's funny because so many of the scenes with Christopher Lloyd, if you see just Doc, there's a good chance he either is looking at Eric Stoltz or he's thinking Eric Stoltz as Marty,
right,
because Michael J. Fox has not been cast yet.
I can't imagine the nightmare that would be to actually be told to be you're not on the movie anymore that you're starring in. And and of course he's gone on to have a great career. And I will plug this. One of my favorite movies is Mask from 1985, directed by Peter Bogdanovich with Cher. Yeah. It's based on the true story of Rocky Dennis, and his performance is so good. And Sam Elliott's in that, and Dennis Berkeley, and a nice crew of people. So I'm glad that he's had success, obviously. But yeah, what a bummer for him. But again, Michael came in and it was gangbusters. And you were talking about the back and forth to Family Ties. If you have an opportunity, Ken, if you've seen it already, there's a great behind the scenes kind of a period from the 80s of a day in the life of what it takes to put on Family Ties.
What will we do, baby, without us? What will we do, baby? Oh, that was flat. If you go back and watch this, for the past 30 seconds, I was not listening to you. I'm sorry. I was trying to think of the Family Ties.
Good.
But I got like...
Were your eyes doing this? Were you like darting back and forth? So I
was like, show me that smile again. Ooh, show me that smile. I'm like, no, that's growing pains.
That is growing pains.
And then I came in. So I apologize, Brian. You probably said something so much more interesting than me thinking about TV themes.
Doubtful. Your honesty and candor are breathtaking.
Well, thank you.
So no, that's fine. That theme song, I mean, I know by rote. You more do the singing. It's too late for all that for me personally, but I'm glad that you sang. That's one of the best theme songs ever. How fun. I love that they painting the picture. I always hated it when they like say, like maybe season 2 or 3, they stopped painting the picture of the Keatons. So anyway, there's a behind the scenes of a day in the life of what it takes to make Family Ties, and it's great. And you see all of them. And Gary David Goldberg, the creator, is wonderful, and all the things that go into it. And this is kind of during that period. So a lot of fun if you're a Family Ties fan or a Michael Fox fan.
Tell me if you agree with this. If a teenager or if someone in their young 20s is watching this, Michael J. Fox said when he was asked about sleep, he said, "I'm 22. I can sleep when I'm older." I think really try to, as best you can, if you're in your early 20s, really do everything you can to really hit the ground running, because it just gets harder. You get older, you get, there's more fatigue, marriage, kids, all kinds of things come in the way. Really, as much as you can, hit the ground running with your career and your passion.
We're exhausted right now, right? I mean, we're just talking, and I am absolutely, I'm going to fall asleep. I'm so tired right now.
I hear you.
No, actually, that's a good point, though. I mean, thank you for that sage advice. And just let you know, I want you to tell me if you are thinking of a theme song, tell me right after, because that's my favorite thing.
I will. That's a promise from me and me from the future. Go ahead. Sorry.
Back to the Future poster, also the best, right? One of the best. I love it. I mean, you can't, and I have it. I should have brought it and put it behind me or something, but we don't plan. So,
but wait, we can put it up now. Boom.
But the posters, yeah, exactly. The poster is the best, and just I think that's the colors, just Marty. It's just one of those great things that goes along with the movie. So,
why does Marty McFly work as a character? Why is he relatable? Well, he's not perfect. Do you think he's smart? Do you think Marty McFly is smart? Not Michael J. Fox, Marty McFly.
I just don't know enough about him, I guess. But
yet it works.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that it's. The whole thing, if you really want to break it down, it's just odd. Like he's got. I guess he has his other friends, like the band members, the Pinheads. I guess those guys are his friend, the band guys. But he's got this, Doc and his girlfriend and all these little things that are going on with his life. That's just really setting him up to go back. So he's just like a typical teenager, like kind of the kid who's just kind of,
I see him as one of those guys that we knew in high school that was always with his girlfriend. And I mean, always with his girlfriend. I think he's one of those, even though he was in the band with the Pinheads. I love the Huey Lewis. What a great cameo.
Yeah.
You're just too darn loud. Just awesome. I never really thought it was weird. There's been a lot of talk. One of the fun things about this film is so many fan theories have come out, so many videos on YouTube, so many stories. It was never weird to me that, I saw this movie as a kid. It was never weird to me that Marty McFly and Doc Brown were friends. To me, it kind of worked. Did you think it was weird, or you just bought it and you went along for the ride?
Totally. I mean, I was already immersed, so I'm not nitpicking. I think the one thing that we have the luxury of is watching these things as kids. So, I wasn't a man watching Star Wars and going, it's a kid's movie. It's the same with Back to the Future. So it stays with me, and a lot of things don't hold up. This one does for me. I think it also falls in line with we talked about it with the mentor piece, but it's very different than like Daniel LaRusso and Mr. Miyagi. But it's the same time, it's kind of that same dynamic, right? Like you have maybe even Luke and Obi-Wan. So it's just I don't know if that even works, but I mean, you have the young kid learning, or I don't know why he would, there's never any understanding about, is he helping him with science fair project? There's nothing. We have no
there's
idea.
No sense. Yes.
Right.
If we're really being nitpicky for this film, that's practically perfect. It might've made more sense if he was more of a science nerd kind of kid, but I see maybe he got a C in science, or maybe a B, just barely. I see him as just barely getting by, but which kind of brings us to the fan theories that Doc always knew. That's why they became friends, because Marty went back to 1955. Let's do a round robin, go through some quick fan theories, which I think are a lot of fun. One, at the end of the movie. Right before the end of the movie, when he comes back to 1985, he sees his other self. He sees Doc Brown get shot again. So that Marty McFly is another Marty McFly that grew up in the house that was a lot nicer, where his parents got along, where his dad wasn't bullied by Biff. That Marty McFly was sent to his death to stop this loop. Another theory is that why does Doc Brown pull Marty in front of a speeding car that's heading towards them when he's just said 30 seconds ago, if this works, you're going to see some serious, so he comes at him. So there's another fan theory that Doc Brown is murderous and even suicidal, or suicidal and even murderous, in another way to sort of end the time loop. Another theory is that the DeLorean has become self-aware and sentient because it breaks down at all the right times. All kinds. Any other fan theories that come to that George McFly always knew, which I think was in the original script. I think that makes sense. Yeah.
I think you've named them all. So for me, it goes like, I don't have any off the top of my head.
Were you thinking of the Family Ties theme while I was rattling that stuff off?
I was.
What will we do? Sha-la-la-la.
So, those are great. That to me is for fans. That's fun for fans.
Sure.
And it's really not a pick apart. It's more so about like going deeper into something that you really enjoy. So time travel movies will usually and always be problematic because the rules of time travel that you don't want to get in. It's hard to get into those because then it's like, well, this is when this theory starts. That's when maybe a movie might break down because of the time travel rules. So I guess for me, I never watched it with a fan theory eye. I never looked at it through that microscope, and so I appreciate you bringing those up because for me, it's just like, I'll listen to those and think about them and. I'm more interested in what happened to Jailbird Joey, if anything. Like, I'm always like, I want to write a. We need to write a script to see what happens to Jailbird Joey after things get good. Now, does he turn his life around? Is he now, rehabilitated? We don't really know what he even does. I love that cake with the bird leaving the jail,
slammed on the table.
Yeah, exactly. So the little characters that are like, he loves being his playpen. Like this is a kid who just wants to be in jail.
The mom is great.
She's great.
Honey, it's stop playing with that TV. It's time for your dinner.
Dinner.
Yeah, she's great.
Everybody's good. Sam, I guess that's him. Like the dad. I mean, every character. However, again, no small parts. Everybody in here has fun. I mean, it's just great writing. I think actors do get a credit. And
who the hell is John Kennedy? He's an idiot.
Who the hell is John F. Kennedy?
Lorraine, you have a kid like that, I'll disown you.
So now this wasn't going to turn into the quote fest. Yeah. He's an idiot. Comes from upbringing. Parents probably idiots too. But it turns into that. So, but the writing's great. The writers should get all the credit because when you have a script this sharp and fun. By the way,
speaking of, I'm sorry to interrupt. Speaking of writing, right. I feel it when I hear it and see it. I feel like the writers had so much fun writing for Doc Brown and writing for Lorraine in the 1950s. I just feel the love under that dialogue. I put your pants over there on my hope chest. I mean, come on, great line.
So this is where we're getting into, like, I feel like it's kind of going in a direction where we can just kind of throw out random things. I love Doc Brown's house. I'm sorry that it burned down. Now it's just the warehouse part of it. It's like the garage, but his actual house is beautiful. It's just like a really cool design. You can probably see if you go on, like, where Doc Brown's house is. I love Doc Brown's house. There's another little production piece I love. Marty's 50s wardrobe. He's wearing a shirt that has like pink, like chain everywhere. That's the great shirt. All these I love Doc building a small scale of the of Hill Valley downtown where the courthouse is, like all that stuff for him, And by the way, you mentioned Doc Brown and what he knows and doesn't know. I think Doc Brown's a kind of a real goof. Like, he's kind of absent-minded. He almost forgot the plutonium. There's a lot of little things that make him, like, the people who are geniuses, but they can't get out the door. Like he kind of gets in his own way. So he may be a genius, but he might have some issues with that. So that might be.
And he seemed like, especially in the 50s, it's almost like he went to therapy for 30 years, or maybe it's just meeting Marty in 1955 changed him. But 1955 Doc, I don't know. I guess he's in his 40s, and then he's in the 70s and the 80s. Is not really clear. But 1950s, who knows?
Who knows how old is he is?
Yeah.
He could be 30 or 80.
1950s Doc seems like more like someone that had done experiments on himself. Electrocuted, and that's always kind of the vibe I got from him.
Electrocuted.
It was
So he's great. I mean, there's a little Einstein there. I mean, there's a lot of that with the hair and. But he's just one of the best parts. I mean, if you don't have those two actors, plenty of actors could make it work, but those two together really have some great chemistry. And
which inspired Rick and Morty. And ladies and gentlemen, if you ever get a chance, check it out. Don't let your kids watch it, but it is awesome. It's just so inventive and inspired by. It's very obviously inspired by Doc Brown and Marty McFly. You're leaning in.
I just wanted to lean in. We can edit this part, right?
No, we got it. My future self will edit it out. We'll edit it. Who am I kidding? Where was 15 minutes before we meet Doc, I think, or maybe 10 minutes. And then it's a good 25 minutes. Sometimes I'll pause it and say, okay, where are we in this movies, films like Back to the Future? Oh, I did this today. You know when he sends his dog Einstein 1 minute into the future?
Correct.
I timed it. It's 1 minute and 20 seconds.
Oh boy, you're ruining the movie for me. Oh man.
But my wife keeps catching me at all my dork out moments, and she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm timing it. I've always wanted to do it."
Well, no, thanks for telling me that. These are the little things, like the time pieces. Go ahead.
So he goes back to the 50s. I love that shot, and it's a simple shot of just he's racing through Twin Pines Mall, which, by the way, apparently someone tried to drive 88 miles per hour in that parking lot, and apparently it's impossible. But I love that shot. It's and great, fantastic exposition. Often I'll talk about exposition. It doesn't feel like exposition, but Doc Brown's so great at explaining everything. Setting up that it's a farm. It's going to breed pine trees. All this stuff. You learn so much about their family. You learn about the enchantment under the sea dance at the dinner the night before.
Wendy Jo Sperber and Mark McClure.
I always liked that actor. Wendy. She's so funny.
She passed away, I believe.
Do you know when she died?
A few years back. Mark McClure, our Jimmy Olsen from Superman. He's Marty. I always wear a suit to the office, right?
But I still live at home.
Yeah.
Wendy is. I love her delivery.
She's great, and these small roles. These guys were great, and these small little.
I feel like she was in Bachelor Party with Tom Hanks.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah,
she was.
Thank you, Brian. So then we meet the Peabodys, which I love it how he goes back into 1955. He crashes in the barn, and I almost pulled out my stopwatch for this. How quickly they get out of bed, turn on all the lights, grab their rifle, get there. It's if you watch it, he crashes. Then it's like less than 2 seconds. They're outside.
Everybody's up. They're up. The Peabodys are up, and I love the young son with his comic book. Of course, the little sci-fi 50s comic that you had. That was the time period too with the space race and all that Sputnik.
Another part of the movie small thing that's always kind of bothered me, more than the Lorraine and Biff thing, but we'll get to that in a minute, is the old people that drive by after he's left the Peabody.
Don't stop, Wilbur! No, right?
According to the what do you call them? Subtitles. It's "Don't stop, Harry, drive."
Okay.
I always thought it was
Wilbur. I heard.
Yeah,
Wilbur.
I think maybe there is. "Don't stop, Wilbur, drive." I always thought it's "Don't stop, we'll die." I was like, well, what does that mean? I think that's such a strange moment in there because I don't know.
I love those two. I loved his face, like Wilbur's, like his pained face when he realized his wife doesn't want him to stop. Like,
don't stop, Wilbur, drive. And is that? I can't believe I'm asking this. Is this a Saturday when he arrives?
Saturday, the November 5th.
Okay, gotcha.
19 and 55, and he goes back on the 12th. See, these are the things we've thought about. Now they have days where people, celebrate.
Right. But then Biff says at the diner, to George, "I sleep in on Sundays."
I guess so. If we break it down to the subatomic level, we may be treading in some very deep, murky waters. Not too early. I sleep in. Right.
I remember back to the first time I saw the movie, and when he was in 1955, which is crazy to me. This would be like someone thinking back to 1990 now. Crazy. Heavy. Doc, this is heavy. But I think what cracked me up the most, the initial Court Square, he's back in 1955, was all the gas station workers that came out. I just thought that, because in the 80s, it was mostly self-service. There was some full service, but that was a neat thing that kind of took me back a little bit.
Definitely. Yeah. I love everything they did with the 50s around the square is the period stuff in the 50s. They just did such a great job. I love all that. I love Hill Valley in the 50s is great.
Yeah. And then we get into the Lorraine scene, which we've kind of already talked about with Marty. She's just so perfect with the way she interacts with him. And then after he leaves the Bain house, it goes and meets Doc Brown, the crazy 1955 version. Just some of my favorite scenes. The picture thing, it's obviously a gimmick, but we buy it, with the brothers and sisters slowly disappearing. Buy it, we go along with it. I love the idea that it's set up that it's a week. We have a week to solve this problem. We've got this picture. We just need to somehow harness this lightning. A great storytelling device.
They got a lot of mileage out of his orange vest too. There's a lot of jokes about that vest. Just a little side note. Yeah, the picture is obviously it hurts too when you are erased from existence. Because obviously when he's playing with Marvin Berry, he's disappearing, so it doesn't feel good to get erased from existence. So I feel bad for his brother and sister.
What does that feel like?
It doesn't feel good. Marty's very ill, and then his hand. It's very 1980s special effects hand comes in front of his face, right? Now, if we're going to nitpick, there's a few, that's
a lot of, and I think now that I think about it, I think it was Steven Spielberg that supposedly had a big problem with that shot in that special effect, because apparently they had to rush it. They had to put it out sooner than they wanted to. Okay. So they're always complaining about that effect. That effect has never bothered me. I saw it tonight. It doesn't bother me. I mean,
does the singing bother you? It's not Michael Fox singing, right? It's someone else.
It does kind of, because it's how old am I in 1985? I'm 11.
Don't tell us.
Yeah, 11. So my 11-year-old self, I know it's not him. So it's never. Yeah, it would have been nice if they had a singer that sounded.
You're already invested at this point. You're already invested in the movie.
Yeah.
Like, and again, he does rock and roll. He slides and jumps, and everybody, and then of course, the audience. That was a big eruption in the audience, by the way. The 50s teeny boppers staring at him.
Yeah,
it's a big eruption. Then I guess you guys aren't ready for that, but your kids are going to love it.
Marvin Berry and the Starlighters. This goes out to all you lovers out there. Awesome. So, all right. So the Lorraine Biff thing. This was before YouTube was coming out. This is over 10 years ago, and it was on TV, and my older sister said, "Oh, watch this," because my little nephews were there. And then we got to that scene, and I just said, "Hey, let's watch something else." And I turned the channel, and Becky said, "Oh, thank you." Like, it's funny. You see films as kids, as teenagers, then later it's funny to see things that don't quite line up later. But I mean, that whole part really does not work. Which I remember, Brian, seeing that movie at church at a youth group. We all watched it, which to me is a little strange. So
it doesn't work. I mean, again, I don't know. We've gone through a few of these types of conversations about scenes that just, even back then, maybe, who knows, right? But I think in general, I mean, your mind's not. I don't know what the mindset is exactly, but yeah, it doesn't. It's atrocious, and it's there, and what are you going to do with it? I mean, it's also a comedy movie too, but it gets very heavy right there.
Yeah, it does. Heavy, to quote Marty.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, that doesn't take the it doesn't take the spirit of fun out of the movie, but it is something that, like in many things, just doesn't play well.
And then later at the end, oh, Biff, they just play it like, oh, silly old Biff. What a character.
Yeah, that's odd. Yeah, I mean, again, like even with Biff in 2 and 3, which we're not talking about, like the idea that his character is all over the place. He's everywhere. He's kowtowed a little, and then he's also this kind of conniving guy. So that's an odd part. So yeah, for me, that's a part that none of my kids have seen Back to the Future. It's just, I'm more conscious of it. Like I said, like I was telling you, like I went to Huey Lewis in the News at 13, like I could go anywhere, see whatever. I mean, it's just, I don't know if it's a product of like the 80s. My parents are great, of course, but I'm certainly more mindful of that kind of stuff. But yeah, Back to the Future is a fun movie, and it's like, where it's going to be remembered.
I'm
But
going to say that annoying thing that I say for films that I love. I don't know how to define heart, but I know it when I see it. Back to the Future, the original Back to the Future has heart. Would you agree with that, brother?
yeah, absolutely.
It
That'd be terrible if I would say no. No,
no,
of
no,
course.
no.
No, and here's why. Yeah, that's no to me. Again, I put it in the top tier of movies that I love and that I've thought about through the years. Like I said, as through the '80s, I was waiting desperately to see part two.
One of my favorite George McFly moments, and I laugh at it every time. Why do you keep following me around? I love that. Just cracks me up.
It's Crispin too. His deliveries. He has a style, and nobody else could really put the type of different emphasis he put on things. He's really a interesting actor.
Clearly has a lot of depth. So we could talk quickly about this. So not that we want to talk about the sequels, but apparently during the filming of the original, he complained about the ending. It's too materialistic. I would argue, well, that's just from the point of the view of our hero, the teenager. That's what he wants. He wants the truck. He wants, by the way, call me old fashioned, but I would not let my 17-year-old son go take his girlfriend out camping. But I guess I'm just an old man now. It's funny how your opinions change on things as you become a dad. But so according to this story, he complained a lot. He was difficult. He complained about the materialism of the end, which I kind of want to say, well, did you read the script before you took the job? And then for the sequels, the truth lies somewhere in the middle. But Bob Gale said he asked for this much. Crispin Glover said, no, I didn't ask for that much. I asked to be paid as much as Biff. Bob Gale said, no, he asked to be paid more than Michael J. Fox. But it's really too bad that they couldn't have just worked it out. I mean, that just blows my mind. Don't you want to be in Back to the Future 2? I mean, Bob Gale, can you please work this out? Crispin, can y'all please get together and just work this out? Please.
Yeah. The part two would have been, I'm maybe an outlier. I think a lot of big Back to the Future fans love part two, and I do not at all. And I was very disappointed by it. Even
we're gonna get to the sequels.
We will. But yeah. So, but everything to me is it's because Crispin's not there.
Yeah.
Because George is not there. That's it.
Yeah. I'm going to say something that might be extremely offensive. I think there's a way that because we're all saying don't ever don't. I think it was filmmaker John Waters said this: don't remake the good films. Don't remake Wizard of Oz. Remake the bad films because then you can find something new out of it. So, do I want a Back to the Future 4? Honestly, no. Do I want some put together remake in a film? No. But I think there's one way it might work, and that would be in a Netflix style series of about 9 episodes, maybe from Doc Brown's point of view. And I kind of in my mind see it the way that Fargo is made. I don't know if you've seen the television show Fargo. The television and cross between Fargo and Stranger Things.
Well, if you're talking about Fargo, what I see is you're saying different time periods in the same general vicinity, like
that
from
too,
the seasons.
But I think the humor behind Fargo, it's a little darker. I think if I were to, and who knows if this would work, but I would keep the DeLorean. I would keep the essence of all the characters, but I would probably have them look different. I wouldn't have Doc Brown look exactly the same. So it wouldn't be that they were imitating these characters. And be clear, just like they did with Walking Dead. Walking Dead was based off of the comic book, and they said from the beginning, look, we might take things from it, we might not. So you never know where the story's going to go. So I think
I speak for everybody when I say, are you talking about bringing back the original cast?
No.
Okay, so that would be my first thing for if we're talking about that. If we're doing dream stuff, which I think is fun.
Yeah.
So different perspective, but still have Christopher Lloyd in there.
Not Christopher Lloyd. Although if I were going to keep one, I would keep him, but not Christopher Lloyd. Different cast. But I think it would be interesting to see. A story from Doc's point of view. I mean, all that he went through, and suddenly you have this kid. You find out he's from the future, and but I would like to, in this dream scenario, I think the time travel approach should be more in the vein of, if you go back in time, you've always gone back in time. I take the example from Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. In my opinion, that's the best use of time travel in a movie. The Harry Potter and friends go and they see themselves in the future, but they don't know it's them. And then later it all works out. So time travel doesn't change anything. It's impossible to change anything because you didn't change anything.
Gotcha. I like that.
Yeah.
You've given this more thought than I have. I guess I'll go back to
because I'm a dork.
No, you're not. This is just part of it. It's fun. I'll go back to my original lark, which is, this is the pitch. Okay. Jailbird Joey.
Yes.
So, I really want to, if he's in jail, I'd like to see what happens when Marty comes back. And that's a little alternative. That's your little Netflix story, right? The idea that Jailbird Joey is now somehow out. His things have changed around him, maybe. I mean, I don't know. That to me is interesting, is that the timeline of what happened with part 1, 2, and 3, and how it has changed the people around them, the ancillary characters that we actually maybe only saw once or twice or just were spoken about. So this is a Jailbird Joey story. I flubbed that.
I wonder what happened to the McFly household in timeline A, so the timeline at the end of the original film. So the parents think they're going to get in the truck and go, and then they don't, but then they're gone. Doc Brown is gone. He has just dealt with terrorists. I feel like within a day or two, some pretty important people are coming around asking some questions.
Absolutely. Now we're getting into when the cops are called, right?
Yeah, when the cops are called.
Yeah, that's the Karate Kid effect. The Karate Kid movie ends when they call the police, right? And then it's like, okay, well, those bullies and that mean sensei are doing this, and then the movie ends, and Daniel never has to learn karate or go to the All Valley tournament. So the same thing with Back to the Future. The cops are called, and the movie ends because now the cops are called, and there's an investigation. And that's it.
Yeah, and how did Doc Brown get in touch with these Libyan terrorists? And this is before the internet.
Wrote him a letter. I don't know. I mean, I think he runs with some interesting characters.
Which is why I think his character would be an interesting central figure for a short-lived Netflix series.
I think so too. And they could also do maybe like the deep face stuff, like you could have Christopher Lloyd, but then de-age him. That kind of looks weird.
That's true.
They did it in Tron Legacy, obviously Rogue One, and it's going to get better and better. They've done it in so many things now, but those are just a few of my examples. They could do that where you de-age him and then just off to the races. I personally don't think that we should mess with it. I think that everything gets messed with.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
I don't want to throw cold water on your.
No, I do think you're right. I think you're right. But I think if you're gonna do it, if you had to do it, I think this would be a way you could do it. I think it would need to be a different medium, not a film. I don't want anything without Michael J. Fox. Like that. He is Back to the Future, and so if he's not a part of it, it doesn't matter to me. But we've seen so many trilogies or whatever you want to say that just get destroyed because they keep trying to make things recapturing what was good, and there's a lot of misses out there. We all know that. I mean, everybody has there's certainly some guilty pleasures in there, but like to me, the Aliens saga just went down in flames. Flames. So yeah, because 1 and 2 are just some of the best movies ever, and then they just kind of go down. And then David Fincher did Alien 3 for Pete's sake, and they still flubbed that one. So that could be something. And by the way, like this is a good example how, like them or not, the new trilogy of Star Wars. While that's going on, you have Mandalorian, which has a lot of excitement. And I think that is also a template for what we're talking about, which is look what they're doing with this Star Wars television show. Like they figured it out.
all the while the movies are getting mixed fan reviews, mixed reviews. So that, there's always the asterisk there, and so it could happen. I want to give you hope.
I got 2 words for you. When the second season of Mandalorian comes out, we're going to do a review of every episode, and we're going to film it. We're going to film it. The talkies. We're going to film it. I say the next day after. I guess it comes out on a Friday, so maybe Saturday we'll record a review.
Let's do it.
Each episode.
Because we gotta, we're, and that's the one thing, we're new at this. This is a new.
What? Do we seem new?
New, yeah, exactly. Yeah, any flubbos? It's just because we're new. And I like to lean into my microphone. I want to do that. That's great. Let's do it. Let's stop everything and start planning that right now, because we're not really. And that's the best part. Listen, this is my favorite thing, Candler, is because we did not plan. And like either way, like for whatever the results are, just having a back and forth about something fun like Back to the Future, that's fun to me. That's all that matters. Like the planning stuff, that's where it just gets a little too tedious. So like I'd love to be able to watch and then have some dialogue, because Mandalorian is strong. I will say this: if I'm gonna nitpick Mandalorian, I will say there's too many times where the child is almost in danger, and then Mando comes back. There's always that moment where there's like 3 of those. I'm like, all right, I've seen that the kid's in trouble, and now you're going to come in and make sure he's okay. That happens a lot. Don't leave him. Just stop leaving him everywhere.
I just love the fact that we're revisiting the Star Wars universe, and I'm not ticked off. It's not. It's amazing. It's like I don't feel like I'm being insulted. I just feel like there's love, there's heart behind. I know I keep saying it, but there's heart in The Mandalorian, and I absolutely have loved it, and I'm really curious where they're going to go with it. But we're going to do that. You have no choice. If I have to call your wife, our producer, I'm going to make it happen. Back to the Future. Do you have a favorite scene?
We haven't talked about the action scenes, but to me, most of everything that happens from an action standpoint, when the crate rider, I guess you could say, they call it the skate crate, when he punches Biff in the diner, runs out, grabs the skate crate, pulls it off, and then of course invents skateboarding.
Right.
Wow, look at him go. So that sequence with Biff and his goon squad chasing him around the square, and then to the manure truck, which is used in every movie. So that is a fun sequence. That I'll from just if I'm thinking of one like that, there you have it. So
and then you end with Lorraine Baines in one of my favorite deliveries.
Where does he come from?
I don't know, but I'm gonna find out.
Right. Oh gosh.
It's so funny.
And Doc Brown. He's looking at the VCR, the video camera.
Yes. Yes.
So what is this is a good place I'll let you kind of wrap it up, but yeah, tell me your favorite.
That's my favorite, The Chase. I love
really?
Doc Brown talks about witnessing the birth of Christ, which just, even as an 11-year-old, it cracked me up, because I'm like, do you know that that's the exact date he was born? And how does that work? Do you fly
000?
Yeah. Do you fly to Israel? I mean, like, you can't. I mean, there's so many funny things about it, but I know it's just an aside. I love all the Lorraine Baines stuff. I love every millisecond Doc Brown and Marty are on there together.
What's the specific scene, though, really, in terms of just
I think the scene, this is definitely my favorite, is the first scene with 1955 Doc. That whole bit. Awesome. I mean, he's at his wackiest. I just love it.
Oh, he's trying to read Marty's mind, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, future boy. Who's president in 1985?
I like the term future boy is great. He says it again.
Future boy.
It's a very interesting story, future boy.
Yes. Daniel Chun, who was on here a few episodes ago on the comic book episode, he said that he doesn't want time travel to be invented, because the chance that somehow you could go back and change things where his child prevent the birth of his child. I am the same way. So let's hope time travel never happens because I like my family.
Amen. Only in film.
Exactly. All right. Well, this has been a great episode. Coming up next, we're going to discuss the Back to the Future sequels and what could have been.
Can't wait.
And if Brian disagrees with me, I'll take this part out.
We might disagree. Actually.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Grab the Remote. Love you, Brian. We'll see you soon.
Love you.
Love you.